Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the #1 resource for actors and talent seekers. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, and I'm here to guide you through every aspect of the entertainment industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. These intimate, inspirational conversations with today's most award-worthy film, television, and theater artists provide you, dear listener, advice on how to live the creative life, personal stories of success and failure alike, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
It takes 3 years to learn how to talk and listen. And when you're doing that, then you can be spontaneous and you can breathe and you can be present and reactive and not have to plan everything out.
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of In the Envelope, a very special episode we have planned for you today with Yahya AbdulMateen II, the SAG Award nominated star of The Trial of the Chicago 7, which is the Aaron Sorkin drama film you may have heard about. It's one of the films getting plenty of award season attention at this most delicious part of award season when all the nominations are just coming out and contenders are just coming into focus. Yahya, of course, is also known for winning an Emmy, most recently, on HBO's Watchmen, which, if you haven't heard our wonderful joint interview with Cord Jefferson and Damon Lindelof about all things Watchmen, do go back and listen to that. But the thing about this interview with Yahya, it's been said on this podcast before, but for me, the takeaway, it was so clear speaking to him how there is no one path towards success in the entertainment industry. And in fact, Yahya has a pretty unique way into the industry, which again, everyone has a completely different way into it, but he never approached it from the perspective of I know exactly what is required to become a working actor. It was something he decided to try after being laid off from his job as an architect. And of course, he'd gotten bit by the acting bug before that. So he details all of that in this interview. We got to touch on The Trial of the Chicago 7. We touched a little bit on Watchmen at the very end. We also touched on 2 of his very exciting upcoming projects, one of which is the Jordan Peele-written Candyman, which has been delayed, and the other is The Matrix 4. So it's a very exciting year for Yahya. It was very cool to talk to him at this point in his career. The other thing I wanted to mention, The Trial of the Chicago 7, if you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, either way, this interview is great. But I encourage you to see it, and I encourage you to look at all of the amazing background work, the work of all of the background actors in this movie. And just an FYI, for those of you who are maybe aspiring actors, early career working actors, who have not signed up for Backstage, I'm looking at I have all of these open tabs on my computer of all of the many casting listings that The Trial of the Chicago 7 posted on Backstage. They sought background talent for this film. If you've seen the film, you understand they had a lot of background talent to cast. Backstage was there as a resource filling those roles. So keep an eye on Backstage casting notices. And as always, stick around after each of our interviews on this podcast to hear from your very own Backstage casting insider, Christine McKenna-Torella, who's there to illuminate all things Backstage, how to use the product to launch your career. This week, she has some very interesting things to say about Yahya. And with that, I am so excited for you all to hear this interview. Let's take a quick break and then get to Yahya AbdulMateen II. For your awards consideration, the HBO original series The Undoing, nominated for 4 Golden Globe Awards, including Best TV Limited Series. Starring powerhouse actors Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant, both nominated for their leading roles at the Golden Globes and SAG Awards, and Donald Sutherland, Golden Globe nominated for Best Actor in a TV Supporting Role. The Undoing, now streaming on HBO Max. Yahya AbdulMateen II is best known for his work in The Get Down, The Greatest Showman, Aquaman, and Watchmen, which just last year won him an Emmy Award. The architect-turned-Yale School of Drama graduate will next star in The Matrix 4 and Candyman, and is currently SAG Award nominated for playing activist Bobby Seale in Aaron Sorkin's Netflix film The Trial of the Chicago 7. Here is Yahya AbdulMateen II. Yahya, hi.
How you doing, man?
I'm so much better now that we are speaking. This week is a lot, or this day, this time. I don't know.
My motto for 2021, just for this year, is take it easy. I think we all deserve some ease in our lives right now.
Totally.
I'm definitely attempting to give that gift to myself of ease, and anybody else who has the desire to do it, man. We all need that right now, especially after last year, so it's the top of the year, if it's going to be a long, plenty of things are going to happen this year. We don't have to rush. We just at the beginning. So, I'm putting ease out into the world, man.
That's great advice already. As you know, we're Backstage. We're all about the craft and career advice.
I love Backstage, man.
I know. I want to ask you about it because it's actually, I was looking at your 2016 Backstage cover story, which
that was my first cover ever.
It must have been which is so exciting. But also that was the very eve of your career. Like that was your first big project. It was for The Get Down.
Sure. Yeah. I love. Yeah.
So now, I mean, that is insane. The past 4 years. And I got to say, looking at your resume versus the other guests we tend to have on this podcast, you have a very interesting trajectory. And I might need to ask you for your whole life story.
It's all good, man. We'll go through it.
Talk to me about your earliest inspirations. I understand acting did not become a thing. Talk to me about how acting became a thing for you.
Well, I think in order to do that, you got to start at the beginning. You got to start at me being the youngest of six in this household that moved around a lot, went to 13 different schools before college. They called us the Black Brady Bunch. We had a mom, a dad, 6 kids, a station wagon. We had the dog. We didn't have a picket fence, but we had a chain link fence, And, our house was the house where all the kids in the neighborhood that came over, our house was like a safe haven. My mother was excellent at being a homemaker, and my father was a father figure in the neighborhood to young men and young women who might not have had fathers in their homes. And we didn't always know how blessed and fortunate we was. It was just kind of what our life was, and but even though we weren't well off, our parents protected us in that way. I start from the beginning because my mother, being the excellent homemaker that she was, she always made sure that we had adventure, in the household. And
sure,
my earliest memories are I always bring up Dick Van Dyke. I grew up on Dick Van Dyke. I grew up on, black and white television and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Mary Poppins. And he wasn't in Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, but Bed Knobs and Broomsticks and Pete's Dragon. And so all of these kids, shows that were great for, a young group of, 6 kids who just needed some type of escape, and all of those were adventure tales. So I don't know how many times I go into the backyard and we try to build a floating car, the floating flying car from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, or we roast our apples, trying to emulate the Pete's Dragon and the dragon heating up the apples, and singing those songs and dancing. So we were very adventurous, imaginative kids, and myself being the youngest. And the baby boy of the group is myself, four girls, and then my oldest brother at the end. I was sort of like the star of the group,
Sure.
So I got away with things. I was spoiled. I was teased, but I was, like I said, I think I was sort of like the young star of the group. I got away with the most things. And that lent itself to me growing up and being in these new places, all of these new schools. And I was never a class clown. I would say that I was never a class clown, but I found that humor was my way in, being the new kid. humor was my way in. I was always very smart and very quiet, but I was always that guy that was surprisingly funny. And once I got to high school, that was the first time I got a chance to make friends for 3 or 4 consecutive years.
Right.
Because I didn't change high schools. I went to one high school. So my personality, I came out of my shell year after year after year. By the time I was in my senior year, I was playing basketball, and I was on the track team, and I was on the debate team, and I played chess, and I hosted the pep rallies. I dressed like Michael Jackson, and I hosted the pep rallies, and I ran for homecoming king, and I lost that to my best friend, and I ran for prom king, and I won that finally because he had won it all since 8th grade. I know I'm giving you. I want to get to where I'm going, but this is sort of the path. This is the ingredients that I take. Yeah, these are a lot of the ingredients that I did not know where it was leading. I was just sort of building personality and building a taste for audiences and for making people smile. It's something that I always loved to do along the way.
Sure.
In college, I went to Berkeley, always wanted to be an architect growing up, studied architecture, also ran track at Berkeley. And one of the exercises that we did in my sophomore year was sort of like it wasn't necessarily hazing, but they made the underclassmen perform for the upperclassmen on the track team. And we go out there on the stage, and the whole team, it's my first time being on a stage. Everything else I'd done in pep rallies and stuff was just on the basketball court. This was my first time being on a stage, and I went on the stage, and I walked out there. I saw the whole team out there in the crowd, and I started imitating the coaches and doing impersonations of the coaches. I was just improvising, and everybody started to laugh, and that was a really good feeling.
Yes.
And the next day at practice, my boy JP, I gotta find JP, man. My boy JP, he said we were stretching. He said they were still talking about my improvisation. He said, "Dude, you got to take a theater class. It's just like recess." and then the rest is history. I heard recess. I heard recess. That sounds like an easy A, And I auditioned for the class. I got into the class, and as they say, the rest is history. And I found something that I fell in love with, and I took it from there.
No, these are all the ingredients, and also I love that you still did have that bit by the acting bug moment, and it's so funny that was almost like a hazing situation. But it was then, I find the PostGrad story so fascinating because talk to me about, first, you were laid off. I know you were laid off from your city planning job, and talk to me about the then move to LA, because I know that you had like a quote unquote plan, and you said, I'm going to give myself a certain amount of time. Oh yeah. Like you approached acting in a way that, as someone who speaks to a lot of actors, that is not how most people approach it that reasonably and that confidently, I would say.
Well, that's all I knew was reason. I took some acting classes, but I studied architecture. I should have been architecture. My brother should have been the engineer. But I was a very logical, and I still am a very logical person. Even though I'm a dreamer, sometimes I'm also hyperliteral. And so I didn't have very many examples, and I thought that the way to become an actor was to move to Los Angeles, get a McDonald's commercial. Yeah. And then after the McDonald's, I was very specific. My plan was to work my way up. And the only person who I knew who studied acting was a young lady who also went to Berkeley, and she had done a McDonald's commercial, and then she was in a music video, and then she was on a soap opera, I believe. And so I said, "Oh, that's how you do it.
That's how you do it." Sure.
My plan was to move to Los Angeles, specifically to get a McDonald's commercial, and then I would get a background job on a soap opera. Yeah. And then I would get a line on a soap opera, and then I would just continue to be promoted. I would work my way up. And I did not go to Los Angeles. The only reason I didn't go to Los Angeles because I didn't have health insurance. Sure. So I said, okay, I started looking for jobs that would allow me to act and have health insurance. There turned out to be this program, Kaiser Hospital. It's a West Coast thing. I'm not sure if it's big on the East Coast, but it's a West Coast thing. Kaiser had an educational program where young people would go into high schools and they would do these skits about sexual awareness and things like that. And I'm like, look, acting, that's skits. I can make a couple bucks. I could get some health insurance, and then I could build up accumulate a number of months of health insurance, and now I can move to Los Angeles.
Amazing.
Well, I went out. I auditioned for this program, and they liked my audition. But the lady, she said, I'm just going to be honest. With this, you got to go into high schools and play a high school kid, and no one's going to believe that you're in high school.
You didn't look like a high schooler.
So this isn't going to work out. But my husband, she said, is putting up a production of Twelfth Night 2 towns over, a little city called Lafayette, at Town Hall Theater in Lafayette. Yes. And they're looking for an Antonio. They're having auditions in a couple of days, and I think that you'd be pretty good. Damn. And I said, I was disappointed because I didn't get the job and I wasn't going to have the health insurance. But I said, okay, well, one door closes, another one opens. Yep. I went out. I auditioned for this. I had some Shakespeare monologues that I had known. I took a Shakespeare class at Berkeley, and I go out and I audition for Antonio. I get the part, and while I was preparing throughout the rehearsal process, 2 people in the cast were auditioning for graduate school. Okay. And then I said, "Oh, you can go to graduate school for acting."
Right. It hadn't occurred to you before.
It didn't. No, it didn't occur to me. I was on my way to Los Angeles to be in a McDonald's commercial. Right. You know what I'm saying? And and so then I learned. I said, "Oh, you can go to graduate school for acting," and I said, "Well, shit, I think I'm gonna try that too." So, so I next thing you know, I went back to some of my professors at Berkeley. I said, "Hey," I just learned about graduate school. I said, "Do you think I'm good enough to go to graduate school?" And the look on their faces, they said, "Yeah, absolutely yes, absolutely yes. We think that you should try it." And that was all it took, was just some positive encouragement along the way. Once I found out that was an outlet, then I began to read a play every single day the summer of 2011. Because auditions were in 2012, and I read a play every single day that summer of 2011, looking for monologues and trying to turn myself into an actor, getting ready to audition. And 2012 came. I auditioned for Yale and NYU and the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, ART at Harvard. I got in across the board, and I decided to go to Yale.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. And we're getting because you're right, you are analytical. Like you had to, reading a play a day is so exciting to me. Like that's such an amazing, a lot of people who decide to apply for grad school do not put in that amount of work, I think. But it's because maybe you were approaching it as a non-actor, as someone who didn't consider yourself an actor, that you Absolutely. Were like, I'm going to become an actor. What do I need to do to make that happen? Yeah,
and I didn't have actor friends. I didn't have people to talk about acting with. My friends were aspiring doctors, aspiring lawyers, aspiring teachers, and politicians, some architects, some working in development. I didn't know anyone who was doing what I was trying to do all of a sudden.
Right. And watching Dick Van Dyke growing up, it's not that you were watching that thinking, I would like to be Dick Van Dyke one day. It wasn't like, I would like to have his career. You're not thinking in those terms as a kid.
No, not at all. No, not at all. That was just, I learned some songs and I didn't have a problem being a goofy kid. And, Dick Van Dyke explains The Greatest Showman.
Okay, yeah.
Dick Van Dyke explains like why I could look at something like The Greatest Showman and be like, oh yeah, that's a world that I want to go and explore and see what that's all about. Then I came from, The Get Down, a very specific world, a very specific character. Yeah. And then I also haven't had an appetite to go and sing Come Alive, or go and sing This Is Me, in my purple spandex and get up there and go and do that whole thing. So I was unashamed, and I think that's also a part of my calling card as well, is that I'm willing to, very curious about what I'm made of and about what I can do, and I'm in this for the long haul and to continue to have a good time. It's all a long exploration, That's how I got into it.
That's great. That's kind of your artistic mission statement.
Well, not necessarily. I think I'm still working on an artistic mission statement. But what I am interested in my artistic mission statement would have something to do with freedom. You know, I don't know very many. If you look at Black actors, traditionally, we haven't really had the opportunities to, whether we've been encouraged or not. Black actors, the most successful ones, we're often expected to do one thing really, really well, maybe two things really, really well.
Totally.
I'm not saying that that's what we can do, but that's sort of how we generally find success.
Totally.
But then I look at a guy like who is this? I love like Robert Downey Jr. You know, and Robert Downey Jr. is going to give you Iron Man. He's going to give you Tropic Thunder. Right. And he's going to give you Chaplin. I think Robert Downey Jr. did Chaplin or something like that. But he's done dramatic work. Like he run his his work runs the entire gamut. Right. And that's freedom. That's the freedom to be malleable and to say, hey, I'm going to follow my appetite, and I don't have this weight of representing a whole entire people. You know, I can go and do the things that I want to do. I can go and do comedy. I can go and do drama. You know, I look at Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder playing the agent in Tropic Thunder. You know what I mean? And like, I said, look, I want to do something like that.
Exactly.
I want to do something like that. I want to go and have fun. It's acting. It should be fun. You know, and
it's freedom. Yes,
it's fun and it's freedom. So that's what I'm after. That's what I'm after. And I'm after other things. I also want to tell important stories. I want to tell the story of Bobby Seale. I want to bring his story and and his legacy to the screen. You know what I mean? That's an important story, and I think that comes with a different type of responsibility and a different type of freedom. You know, you can go in there and you can own something, and you can take the narrative back, and you can walk into a room as Bobby Seale, and you can demand respect and demand humanity and demand that your voice is heard, demand that you're not silenced, and you can say, you can be loud and you can be bold and you can inspire people in that way. And that's an important part of my artistry as well. You know,
I love that. Mm-hmm. That is beautiful. Can I ask about Backstage? Did you ever use Backstage for casting
notices? I stayed trying to get jobs off Backstage. I stayed trying, submitted myself for things and trying to find out what jobs, what was what. You know, I think young aspiring actors, you know, we stayed on Backstage trying to get the inside scoop, and then I ended up on the cover, man, and that was
yes.
Crazy, so quickly too out of graduate school. You know, that was it was a real honor.
Yeah, and so talk to me about the what was the timing of it? You were auditioning for the Get Down as you were wrapping up at Yale.
The last show I did at Yale was a show called The Winter's Tale. I played Leontes in The Winter's Tale. I played Leontes and I played the shepherd. Or we made him into a clown, and I played both those roles. And one of my classmates, her agent came to see her in the show, and she saw me, and she said, "Who's that guy?" And she threw me a bone, which was the audition for Cadillac, and I got the job. And so I got the job about a month and a half before I graduated from Yale. I got the job as Cadillac on the Get Down. Wow. I walked the stage in June, and 10 days later, I was filming the scene in the first scene in the big disco scene in Les Infernos. Wow. Mm-hmm.
And so what did you learn from Yale? And like you just said, I think you already have established this career of freedom, of constantly surprising us, maybe to the point where we are no longer shocked or surprised to see you in different roles. Mm-hmm. And we are all obsessed, of course, Backstage is obsessed with how you create all these characters. Are there things that you do each time for each of these different roles? How much of that came from grad school? Because grad school was, of course, your first big, real, thrown into the deep end, I assume, training.
My teacher, Ron Van Loo, love Ron Van Loo. He said he said a lot of gems, man. But I heard him say one thing once, and it was a little cheeky thing to say. He didn't say it to me, but he said it to the class about someone from years and years and years before our time. He said, when the casting list comes out, he said, sometimes people come into my office and they say, "Ron, why do you always cast me in the same role?" Now, it's not the literal same role, but you talk about archetypes or things like that.
Sure.
So why do you always cast me in the same role? And Ron says, "Well, do I cast you in the same role, or do you play the same character?"
Interesting.
And everybody kind of said, "Oh," you know what I mean? Do I cast you in the same role, or do you play the same character? And I did believe that I had that I could do something on the big screen. I did believe that I was like built for prime time something. But what my trajectory was, going back to being that very practical person, was I thought I was going to graduate from Yale and then go to New York and then go do plays on Broadway. The year before I graduated, I did Shakespeare in the Park, one of my best theater experiences. I thought I was going to go and do Broadway and then, maybe get into some television and eventually do film. But I knew that I was on my way to Broadway. That was the destination. And in theater is a medium that encourages us to be transformative, to explore, to take on different characters and personality. Film is different. Film is tricky. Film is risky because of critics. You know what I mean? Film is risky. There's a risk because of critics and because of acclaim and long careers and icons and being a sex icon and being known for these things and people. So film rewards you for being a staple. For having your product that you deliver.
Yeah.
Denzel Washington, who is a transformative actor, 100%. But it's like the Denzel Washington experience, and that's a great thing. That's not a knock on Denzel because he's a transformative actor. But film to me rewards a sure thing.
Yeah, almost branding.
It rewards branding. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Reputation, branding, it rewards a sure thing.
Totally.
Maybe even allows us type. Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Theater allows us to experiment and to make mistakes and to play different characters that you would never play out in the real world. Yeah. And me being this guy who just came straight from graduate school where I've played I run the gamut of characters. That's how I learned to act. Right. And so that's what I brought to my characters. Now as my career goes on and progresses, maybe we'll see. Maybe I'll settle into a place and I'll put together a body of work where my so to speak, my type or my archetype will be able to be more readily identifiable. But as of right now, I've been blessed enough to have options where I've been asked to be much more creative in my character building. Totally. And I have the courage to do it. I also believe that I'm going to do some really bad projects. Okay. I'm going to be really bad in some things.
Because that's part of the gig.
That's part of the gig. Me. That everybody is not going to do that. I don't think, there's some actors who just are not going to be bad. They're not going to be bad. Sure. I think that's just how it goes sometimes. Me, I don't know. I think some. If once you lay out all the things, I'll be like, yeah, that wasn't my best work right there. I don't know what I was going for something. I didn't quite execute there, but I'm going for something. I'm after something, and I think that's the same. For that same reason, I'm willing to say that if I stick around long enough and if I keep up this type of craftsmanship, that I'm also going to be really good in some things. Sure. You know what I mean? Because of the same type of way that I'm willing to work. So as August Wilson says, you got to take the crookeds with the straights. And so I'm willing to do that with my careers.
Right. You'd rather take big risks than play it safe. And also the takeaway here is like every time you've looked at the industry and said, well, it looks like step 1 is this, and step 2 is this, and step 3 is this, life has turned out completely differently. So
100%. 100%. That's how it works out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This episode is brought to you by the HBO Max original series, The Flight Attendant, nominated for 2 Golden Globe Awards, including Best TV Comedy, starring Golden Globe and SAG Awards nominee Kaley Cuoco, whose performance Entertainment Weekly calls phenomenal, and The Hollywood Reporter raves is a star turn for Kaley Cuoco. The Flight Attendant, now streaming on HBO Max. You've talked to about, in terms of the process for each of these crazy different characters, super, super hard work. And I'd love to hear about like the hard work. You're such a practical, rational person, as we're saying, but then what happens when you get on set and you want to be spontaneous? Like, how are you as a reactive listening type of performer?
I think that was the lesson that I learned at Yale. I think after 3 years at Yale, If you say, what can an actor from Yale do? You know, an actor from Yale who comes out of Yale, now it doesn't apply across the board because you can't apply anything to everyone across the board, but an actor who comes out of Yale has a greater degree, I believe, based on the education that I received and the education that I watched other people around me receive, has the ability to talk and listen.
Amazing.
Talking and listening is so hard.
Yes.
It takes 3 years to learn how to talk and listen.
Amazing.
I promise you that. It takes 3 years to learn how to talk and listen. And because of when you're doing that, then you can be spontaneous and you can breathe and you can be present and reactive and not have to plan everything out. Film is interesting because film is fast. You know, film is fast. You've kind of got to come in with some ideas. You kind of can't. I found that I can't go into film and just say, okay, we're going to see what happens on the day.
Gotcha.
You know, so I have to plan a degree of some things, or set out a blueprint, I should say, and then be able to follow that blueprint, but also be able to change with the changes. And that's kind of how I play on set. But it should always be play. It's not always that way, and that depends on work environment and, you know, maybe director style.
Sure.
But that's how I like to. That's the type of environment that I like to be in. Is when there's a free environment of play.
Was there an environment of play with Bobby Seale? I got to ask you about Bobby Seale, because first of all, is it different playing a real person, and how much of the work is research and investigating and all of that background?
No, it wasn't. The process wasn't different.
Okay.
The responsibility was different.
Right.
The responsibility to
the stakes.
The stakes, the stakes. You know, to go back and to represent someone. Honestly, you know, I grew up in Oakland, California, knowing of Bobby Seale, knowing of the Black Panther Party, and I wanted to honor his experience. You know, that experience that he had, you know, that Bobby Seale had during this trial was a horrendous experience, and no one should ever go through that, you know, in life. And there were so many forces that were placed up against Bobby Seale in order to silence him, in order to defeat him, in order to break his spirit. And I wanted to protect him. You know, I went into this job wanting to be an advocate for Bobby Seale and for his story, and for his experience. So I had a responsibility to him and to history, and also to the ways in which he was an advocate for so many young and older, you know, black people, poor people, all the way up into me, you know, growing up in Oakland. So my job was to be an advocate for him and for his experience and for others like him when I stepped into that role.
And I do appreciate that. That's of course that is the main difference, is that it feels like more of a responsibility. I'm curious about like the after, because then you've filmed the thing, it's in post-production, a pandemic happens for one thing, but also then 2020 was a crazy year involving lots of events that the movie echoes. The movie echoed, you know, film despite being filmed before all of that. So what has it been like to see it released, first of all, remotely, but then, I don't know, to see it echoed in the news? And does the responsibility of playing Bobby Seale or talking about it change given the current climate?
I think given the current climate, you know, having had the experience of stepping into Bobby Seale's shoes, one is it's an honor that, you know, I was the actor who was blessed and who was fortunate enough to step into those shoes. But also, you know, the film is about courage. It's about finding your role, your job in the revolution. You know, there's a refrain in the film that says the whole world is watching. And this is a moment in time where the whole world is certainly watching. What are we going to do next? What are you going to do with your voice? What are you going to do with whatever it is that you're equipped with, whatever it is that you're blessed with? Or what are you going to do on the occasion of whatever it is that you're concerned about? You know, the whole world is watching us go in. We're going in one direction, you know, whether we like it or not. It could be, you know, sometimes it looks bad, and then, you know, and then the world steps in and young people step in. People of all ethnicities, you know, and backgrounds, they step in and they pull a train back on the side of right, you know. But right now the world is trying to hold on to something that is archaic, that is out of style, that is old fashioned, that needs to go away. and it feels like it's on its last leg and it's trying to hold on and fight back.
Wow.
But in the same way that the characters from our film, stepped up and put themselves on the line and aligned themselves with the cause, I see the world responding in the same way. So, it was great to see, that the message that we put out into the world, that we intended to put out into the world, actually did resonate, with what was going on,
Totally. And in fact, I'd love to go there and ask, like, we're all about the advice, but these days I've been trying to ask people for advice in terms of how to navigate the industry in this changing, crazy world, and specifically actors who are not as empowered as the people greenlighting projects, or they generally they're at the bottom of the food chain of Hollywood.
Man, yeah.
But Hollywood's going through a lot of changes. So, like, what do you say? I mean, what do you recommend to actors just starting out, or actors who are looking to just do everything you just said and really make a difference and really play characters that are important and have that voice?
I would say love what it is that you bring to the table. Know what you bring to the table and love what it is that you bring to the table. Because you step into this world and actors, performers are asked to be so many different things. And we all come out asking for, like, we come out asking for jobs and asking for roles, and we just love it so much. And sometimes you can get caught up in wanting a job that you lose track of what you of who you are, what you represent, what you're after. But I would say that to any young artist out there, or young or old, or just stepping into this profession, is just love what you bring to the table, and work on that, support it, and stand up for yourself, and stand up for your art. The times are changing so that we don't have to compromise ourselves and our integrity and our art in order to be employed. And I think that the world is making space. The artistic world is making space for different voices. And aside from making space, like, people are taking space and saying, you know what, if you're not going to make space, I'm going to take space and I'm going to tell this story. I demand that this story be told. Okay, you're not going to do it, I'm going to go to Amazon. And Amazon's going to tell it. Oh, Amazon's not going to tell them, go to Hulu. Okay, I can't get to Amazon or Hulu. Well, guess what? YouTube.
Totally. There's so many platforms.
Exactly. YouTube. Okay, well, you know what? Short series on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram. Totally. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to find my actor friends. I'm going to find my community. And I'm going to take, in the same way that people are marching in the streets and taking back, taking what's rightfully theirs, and taking and standing up for what they believe in, standing up for what they want. Now's the time for artists to do the same thing and say, you know what, I'm not asking for my art to be accepted anymore. I'm going to take the space that I'm looking for. I can't find a yes. I'm going to make a yes. You know what I mean? Totally. And I'm going to put my art out into the world. I'm going to love it and I'm going to appreciate it. So whether it's your activism or your artistry, right now is a time to take and to not ask for permission. So that's the advice that I will give, to anyone entering this industry at any level right now.
Gosh, that is really primo. Especially, I've never heard it put that way. That, of course, that advice parallels, activists in life and also artists in Hollywood. Like, don't ask. If you're an actor, you're in the habit of asking, but don't ask.
Yeah.
Take. Make your own way.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. What kind of audition advice do you tend to give? And have you auditioned much since that Get Down audition, or has it all been? I mean, how many auditions have you had since?
I kind of still audition.
Okay.
I think I'm auditioning less these days, but I'm down to audition for sure. I auditioned for The Matrix, and that was the last job that I finished. So yeah, I still audition for sure. I wear mismatched socks in my auditions. Okay. Because that already tells me that I've already fucked up. You know what I mean?
Oh, really?
So yeah, it takes the pressure off. It's like walking with mismatched socks. I'm already imperfect. So then it takes the pressure off of trying to be perfect because I
love that.
So I've already done it. Also, this was my very first audition. Cadillac was my second audition.
Okay.
But my first audition was for the O.J. Simpson story, the O.J. versus the People. I think that's what it was.
Oh,
the one it was for Ryan Murphy, the Sterling Brown role.
Sterling's part. Oh, okay.
Yeah, for
wow.
Darden. My very first audition. I auditioned for that on a Tuesday. I'm still in graduate school, and I auditioned for Cadillac on a Thursday. For 2 days later, I auditioned for the Get Down. And I never forget this, and I've done it every audition since. I'm sitting in there, and I'm doing the audition. And
also, did you overlap with Jonathan Majors at Yale?
Oh, yeah, that guy, that's my dog. That's my dog. Was this actor eventually in this series? I don't know if this actor was in this series, so I won't use his name in this in the story. Yeah. But the actor that I really, 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 really admire stepped out of the audition. I'm in the waiting room and I'm going over my lines and stuff like that. And an actor that I really, really admire walks out of his audition. He rolls up the paper, drops it in the trash can, looks at me, gives me a nod, and walks the fuck out of the room. And I said, that's how I'm doing it from now on. Yeah. And so that's what I do. I walk into an audition. I always carry my sides with me into the audition. Okay. Know it verbatim, know it backwards and front, up and down, but have it on you, just because things happen. And then I walk out of the room and I throw the sides in the trash can. Yeah. Before physical. I leave, I throw the sides in the trash can and I walk the fuck out. And so my advice is to go into the room, never go into the room asking for a job. Mm-hmm. You go into the room and you play the part. Gotcha. You go into the room and you play the role and then you walk away. So that if you don't get the job, you've already played the part. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I've already played the role. I love that. And to collaborate when you can. I think auditions are a partnership. Ron Van Leeuwen, another thing that he told us, and Walton Wilson, they tell you this in the Yale auditions. They said everybody in this room has the same goal. The people on this side of the table, when you walk into the room, we want you to be the person to get the job. That's what casting directors, they root for you. They want to find the right person. So when you walk into the room, they want you to be the person to get the job. And so that's, I think I try to arm myself with as much as possible so that I know that there's a lot of goodwill on my side, and that's kind of how I tend to think about it.
That helps with nerves, of course.
Yeah, and it lowers the stakes. Yeah, and so does the mismatched socks, because there's no such thing as a perfect audition, so you might as well just make it imperfect right off the bat. Right, I've already messed up, so what the heck? That's one less thing to worry about. That's awesome. Thank you so much. This is such amazing advice. I have to let you go soon, but we ask these silly, backstagey, actorly questions of everyone. What is your worst audition horror story? My very first audition, back at Berkeley. Oh, okay. I did a monologue. I didn't know much about monologues, but I found something from a movie. Ving Rhames. I did my best Ving Rhames impersonation from the movie Baby Boy, and I just did what he did, and I went in there, leaning against a pillar, and I tried to make my voice just like Ving Rhames. And I did his monologue, and the last line of the monologue is, "Guns and butter, you little dumb motherfuckers," something like that. And these two teachers, they sitting in the front row, and I'm looking them dead in the fucking eyes. I'm looking them dead in the eyes the entire time. I'm leaning on a pillar because Ving Rhames might have been leaning on the wall. I'm smoking a pen because Ving Rhames was smoking a cigar. And I'm just looking them dead in their eyes. I give them the whole scene from top to bottom. And then at the end, "You dumb motherfuckers," and I walk off. I got into the class, but first day I learned that you shouldn't, look the people in the eye when you're doing a monologue. But I had them locked in. That's my most fun, I think, audition story. That's great. That's great. Yeah. What is one performance you think every actor should see and why? James Earl Jones in Fences on Broadway. Oh my God. You talk about lived in and full of life and mischief and just mean and charismatic. Best stage performance I've ever seen, I think. Yeah, James Earl Jones in Fences. I saw it I used to go to the Lincoln Center when I was at Yale. And when I get to New York, I go to the Lincoln Center, and at that time you could watch productions of old Broadway plays and things like that. And so I would go to the Lincoln Center and watch theater, watch old productions.
And that's actually great advice too. It's a resource that I think not enough New York people know about, because I've used that too. In fact, I watched Denzel and Viola do Fences in that same format.
Then Denzel brought the house down too. Yeah,
that's a great way to see the kinds of performances that then become your gold standard for acting. It sounds like is that what, like, the level of acting that you're always going to try to reach toward?
I'll tell you this much. They sure do send you back to go do your homework. They sure do send you back to go do your homework. So you know whether or not you gave it your all. After you see, there's some performances that just send you back. I watched Denzel on Training Day. And then I gotta go do my vocal exercise. I gotta go do my text work. I got to go back to work. Yeah. Because that was, you talk about masterful performances. I watch John Cazale, and anything that John Cazale does, I said, look, you better learn how to tell the truth, because he tells the truth. He tells the truth, and he has no false movements. Those are some of the performances that are that are really that feed me a lot.
Feed you, yeah. Like, if you ever feel like you lose your way from what is great acting, and then those are the kinds of revisiting those is what kind of reestablishes that center.
Yeah. You get those reminders, because I'm new in this town. I'm a new guy in this town. And
sure.
There's a lot of shiny stuff in this town. You know what I mean? And the shiny stuff is good, but you got to keep it in perspective, and you got to remember how you got close to the shiny stuff, and remember that the shiny stuff was never the goal. It's a byproduct, but the experience and the craftsmanship and what you learn and how you surprise yourself and the effect that you have on other people, going back to making other people smile. Those are the things that I'm reminded that I'm in it for.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for taking listeners on the advice about how to navigate the industry, the shiny stuff, but also it has to keep coming back to the love of the craftsmanship, love of the process.
Absolutely.
That seems
100%.
That's the guiding force. Do you have any other last minute words of wisdom for listeners, for Backstage users?
Let's go back to the conversation at the top of the game, at the top, and say, take it easy. Take it easy. And take it easy. That's kind of my advice. Listen up, take it easy, and take it from there. I'm
going to take that advice too, for sure. Yeah. 2021 needs that energy.
Sure.
Yeah. Can I ask one last really random question? I didn't realize that when you were cast in Watchmen, that you didn't know you were playing Dr. Manhattan until afterward. Yeah. Congratulations on your Emmy Award, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I waited till the very end of the interview to say that, but what was that like? I mean, you started playing one character and you learn you're playing another in the middle of filming?
It wasn't the middle. It was maybe 2 episodes in, not far beyond that. But we had filmed the pilot and went away. You film the pilot, you usually go away, then you come back and you do and you pick up. So we had came back and we picked up, and we're in somewhere in the second episode, maybe a second, going away to the third, and have a meeting with Damon, and he lets me know the skinny about what's really going on.
That's so crazy.
And it became this whole entirely different thing, man. And I was blessed. I was blessed even beforehand, to play Cal. Cal was a stand-up guy. You don't see very many characters like him on television. Strong, solid, supportive man, a husband, staying at home, taking care of the kids, not conflicted about his role. He was very confident in who he was, and that's important to show that as well. And I got to do that for 7 episodes or 6 episodes or something like that. And then it was the big guys, time to shine. So I got to do it all.
That's really cool. It's really not an exciting year for the planet or for humanity or whatever, but it's a very exciting time to be watching your work. And I'm really excited to see Matrix and Candyman.
Yeah, sure. I'm excited for audience to get in front of that also.
Which I know you can't talk about either of those at all, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes today, man.
Yeah. Yahya, thank you so much. This is so great.
I appreciate you. It's been good.
And now it's time to hear from Christine McKenna-Torella, our backstage casting insider. I will let her take it away.
Hi guys, Christine McKenna-Torella here. Yahya has a fantastic story, the almost not an actor story. And after listening to him and Jack, I got inspired and I went back to revisit his cover story with Backstage back in 2016, which is on the site. And he mentioned it in this interview. He was almost an architect. And he decided to change paths because he got laid off and pursue acting by way of an acting course at Yale, an MFA. I love this. In light of the last year and how lots of people have been made to pivot because of the pandemic, the truth is there is no one way. There's no one path on the road to building your career, but you have to invest in yourself and believe in yourself. We've actually interviewed a number of his Trial of Chicago 7 colleagues, including Sacha Baron Cohen, who is our cover story from last month. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, it's very powerful and very timely, and it's on Netflix. There is no one correct path to building your career, just as there is no one way to correctly audition, apart from preparedness and professionalism, which is universal to all types of interviews and auditions. And I liked Yahya's audition advice, which is take it easy on yourself, right? He deliberately wears mismatching socks so he doesn't have to strive for perfection. How brilliant is that? It takes away the nerves and it lowers the stakes. He said, never go into the room asking for the job. You go into the room and you play the part. You go into the room and you play the role, and then you walk away. But if you don't get the job, you already played the part. Yahya also have said that he saw another actor throw away their sides as soon as they had auditioned as a way of kind of cleansing themselves, letting go of the moment that has passed and moving on. And as a casting director, I've actually seen that done quite a bit in auditions. So there must be a teacher out there who recommends you do it. And if it helps you let go of the audition, then I am all for it. But what I will say is make sure that the audition is really over. I've seen a lot of actors being called back into the room and fishing sides out of a trash can or begging, a colleague beside them to borrow their sides quickly as they go back in. I love hearing advice like this from actors, and they've already done the work and they've found their pathway to enjoy the business of auditioning and being an actor. If you want more advice like this, I want you to check out our column called Backstage 5 online. The idea is that we've had 5 minutes with an actor and we ask the common, how did you get here questions to that actor. I pulled some of my quotes from the Crown feature that I did a few weeks ago on the podcast from this column. And this week I thought I'd highlight one more of Chicago 7's cast, Jeremy Strong. In his Backstage 5 interview, his audition advice was know the material. He said, that doesn't have to mean prescribed notions of what you're going to do in the room or clever ideas about some effect or result that you want to achieve with it. It really just means know the material backward and forward and maybe 100 times more than you think you need to. If you don't know it well enough to still know it in the middle of a cyclone, then you don't know it well enough. Only then might you have the ability to present and listen, which is the beginning of everything. I think you can tell why I gravitated towards that particular quote about the cyclone. I think the imagery is fantastic, and I'm always on about preparedness and making sure you really feel ready in your room so that you've done all you can to achieve. We have hundreds of these types of articles and columns of Backstage 5s on the site. They're really useful, quick reads on your journey to figuring out your style and voice as an actor. On to the casting calls of this week. HBO's Euphoria is looking for one of their leads on our site. They're looking for a male identifying 18-plus-year-old to play 17. It's important that they're 18-plus because Euphoria has very adult themes in the season that they have already put out there and this new season that they are casting for. They're seeking submissions nationwide from the US. Must be US for this one. More details on this site and read that breakdown carefully to see if you're a fit. Hershey's is looking for digital voiceover talent for a 6-second promo at SAG After Scale. Nationwide, and it'll be recorded at home, so at-home studio capability is important for that casting call. Check it out. And finally, HSN is casting for a new food TV personality. They're interested in influencers and culinary hosts for new segments on their shows. A sincere love of cooking is a must for this one. Take a look at all the details for that listing. There are hundreds of casting calls for all regions and all types of talent over at Backstage.com. Head over there to check out more. Break a leg in all your upcoming auditions and have a beautiful week.
In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Grouse Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Thanks as always to our producer extraordinaire, Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Kasey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. That's right, 100% free. For more exclusive content, join us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who would you like us to interview next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another glimpse in the envelope.